Small makeshift houses used by homeless residents could soon be gone from the streets of LA.
Elvis Summers built 37 tiny houses by hand for about $1,200 each and gave them away to people sleeping on the sidewalks of Los Angeles. Each one was 6 feet by 8 feet, with a solar panel on the roof, wheels underneath, and a door that locked from the inside. Then, on a February morning in 2016, a city sanitation crew pulled up to a freeway overpass in South Los Angeles and started loading those houses onto a flatbed truck. But the part of this story that still makes people angry is what Los Angeles did 5 years later. South Central Los Angeles, spring of 2015. An older woman was sleeping on the dirt strip outside a small apartment building on a residential street. Her name was Irene McGee, although everyone on the block called her Smokey. She was in her 60s, a grandmother, and she had been living outside for more than a decade. If that surprises you, it should not. Adults over 55 are the fastest growing group of people losing their housing in this country, and a large share of them are women who were stably housed for most of their lives. Elvis Summers lived in the building she slept in front of. He was 38, a musician with a mohawk and tattooed arms, and he had been homeless himself at one point, which meant he understood the specific arithmetic of a night on the sidewalk. Where you lie down, what you can carry, what disappears while you close your eyes. He and Smokey became friends the ordinary way. Good mornings on the front steps, shared food, long conversations, and the thing that kept eating at him was not that she was homeless. It was that everybody on that block knew her name, everybody liked her, and nobody had done anything about the fact that a woman in her 60s was sleeping in the dirt in front of their homes. So he bought lumber. He set up in a driveway with a circular saw and a stack of 2x4s, and he built her a house. A wooden frame on a small trailer base, plywood walls, a peaked roof, a window, wheels underneath so the whole thing could be towed. It was 8 feet long. It cost a few $100s in materials. He filmed the entire build on a camera, propped up on a tripod, mostly so his friends could see what he was up to, and he posted it online. At the end of the video, Smokey hangs a small "Home Sweet Home" sign on the inside wall. He thought a few hundred people might watch it. More than 5 million did. And this is where the story stops being about one woman on one sidewalk. Within weeks, donations were arriving from people who had never set foot in Los Angeles. Nearly $60,000 at first, then more than $100,000 in total, sent in from around the world. Carpenters emailed offering weekends. Retirees offered tools. Parents wrote in on behalf of children as young as 6 who wanted to help build a house for somebody they would never meet. Summers was not a nonprofit executive, and he was not a city contractor. He was a guy with a saw and a donation page. So he did the only thing that made sense to him. He started building more. The design settled into something simple and deliberate, 6 feet by 8 feet, roughly the footprint of a parking space, 2 windows for light and air, a small solar panel on the roof, enough to run a light and charge a phone, a portable camping toilet, wheels, so the structure was technically mobile, and the detail that mattered more than any of the others, a door that locked from the inside. Total cost, about $1,200 per house. Hold on to that number. It comes back at the end of this story in a way you will not expect. If you have never slept outside, the locking door is the part that is easy to underestimate. Ask anyone who has spent a year unsheltered what they lost first, and the answer is rarely food or money. It is sleep, real sleep, the kind you can only get when you are not listening for footsteps. A tent does not lock. A tarp does not lock. A $1,200 plywood box with a latch does. And the effects showed up almost immediately, in ways that had nothing to do with comfort. People who received a house could keep an identification card without it being stolen. They could keep medication somewhere dry. They could leave their belongings behind for 6 hours and go to a job interview, which is close to impossible when everything you own has to travel with you. Outreach workers knew where to find them, week after week, at the same spot. A caseworker with a clipboard can help a person who has an address. A caseworker cannot help a person who was on 54th Street on Monday and nobody knows where on Thursday. Volunteers started showing up on weekends. Neighbors, church groups, students, people who had watched the video and driven across the county with a cordless drill in the back seat. They built in driveways and empty lots and alleys.
Somebody order a tiny house?
Over the following months, the houses spread across the city, from Van Nuys in the north, down to Inglewood, wherever there was somebody sleeping outside and somebody willing to tow a house to them. By December of 2015, Los Angeles hit a cold snap right before Christmas, and Summers pushed to build 10 more houses in a single weekend. He had a reason for the urgency. A woman he knew on the street had asked him a few weeks earlier whether he could build a house for her and her partner.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Before he got to it, she went to sleep outside and did not wake up. He said afterward that he knew it was not his fault. He also said he could not stop thinking about it. That is roughly the moment the city of Los Angeles began paying close attention. Complaints were reaching council offices, inspectors were photographing the houses under the overpasses, and the paperwork was starting to move. None of it in the direction he had hoped. The complaints started with neighbors, and it is worth being fair about them, because they were not all unreasonable. The houses were sitting on public sidewalks and under freeway overpasses. Some residents said they were eyesores. Some said they blocked the walkway. Business owners worried about what was happening around them after dark. City officials raised fire risk because a wooden box with a candle inside is a genuine hazard, and they raised sanitation because a camping toilet is not plumbing. Officials also said that in some cases, they had found drugs and weapons inside the structures. And underneath all of it sat a harder question that no city can dodge forever. A sidewalk is public property. Once you allow permanent private structures to be installed on it, you have to decide who gets to do that, where, and who is responsible when something goes wrong. Those are real questions. They deserved a real answer. The answer Los Angeles chose was a truck. Now, at the exact moment the city was deciding these houses were unacceptable, roughly 44,000 people were sleeping outside, in and around Los Angeles. The city had a $2 billion plan to address homelessness over 10 years. What it did not have was a way to pay for it. The plan existed on paper. The people existed on the pavement. The legal mechanism came in the form of a sweeps ordinance covering bulky items left on the street. Furniture, mattresses, large debris. Anything classified as a bulky item could be removed and destroyed immediately, without the notice and storage process that normally applies to a person's belongings. Tiny houses fit the definition, so tiny houses became bulky items. In February of 2016, sanitation crews and police seized 3 of the houses from freeway overpasses in South Los Angeles and tagged others with removal notices. Summers spent that week racing the trucks. He towed 7 or 8 houses to private property, church lots, backyards, anywhere off the public right-of-way. The rest he could not save. By his own count, at least 11 people were put back on the sidewalk. With nothing left to offer, he went out and bought them tents. One of the men who lost his house was named Willie Hadnot. When a reporter asked him what he missed, he did not talk about the roof or the walls. He talked about peace of mind, about being able to close a door behind him and lie down in the quiet. He said he did not want to start crying. Another man, Kevin Green, had his house tagged for removal. Summers got to it before the truck did and moved it. Count what that operation took. A city crew, a truck, a police presence, staff hours, fuel, and a disposal site, all deployed to remove donated housing from people who had nowhere else to go, and then to destroy it. Nobody offered those 11 people a shelter bed on the way out. Nobody offered them a room.
A dream come true, destroyed.
The houses were removed because they violated a rule about objects on sidewalks, and the people inside them were left standing on the same sidewalk, now with nothing on it at all. Whatever that operation cost the taxpayers of Los Angeles, it bought less than nothing. It converted 11 housed people back into 11 unhoused people, at public expense, in a city that was simultaneously advertising a $2 billion plan to do the opposite. If any of this is close to home right now, either because your own budget has gotten tight this year, or because somebody you love is already out there, There is a free guide in the first link below called The Veteran's Blueprint. It covers the part nobody explains. How to get a mailing address and a photo identification card when you have neither. Which assistance programs actually move in a matter of days, and which ones will sit on your paperwork for months. And what to say when you call an intake line so that your file does not get quietly closed. It was written for veterans and their families, and almost all of it works for anyone. It costs nothing to read. First link below. By April of 2016, the Seizures had stopped being a local story. Supporters organized a protest outside City Hall. Dozens of people showed up with cameras and phones, and the coverage spread far beyond California. National radio picked it up. International outlets picked it up. The image was simply too clear to ignore. A city with tens of thousands of people sleeping outside, spending public money to destroy free housing that private citizens had donated.
So these all used to belong to somebody, huh?
Yep.
And now they're not being used.
That month, the city agreed to give the impounded houses back. That sounds like a victory, and for about a day it felt like one. Summers planned to store the returned houses on a church lot in Compton while he searched for a piece of land he could use properly, ideally somewhere with showers, toilets, and electricity. He was clear that he never saw the houses as the final answer. His argument was that a locking door gives a person a fixed address and a stable place to sleep, and that once someone is anchored in one spot, caseworkers, doctors, and job programs can actually find them. You cannot deliver mental health services to a person who moves every time a street sweeper arrives. He hoped the city would offer a surplus lot. A spokeswoman for Mayor Eric Garcetti said the mayor appreciated creative efforts from citizens, but that he did not support the village concept. Not at that time. So the houses came back, and there was nowhere legal to put them. 37 of them went into storage. And what Los Angeles eventually did with that exact idea is the part that still gets brought up in council chambers. Because there was never a formal ban. There did not need to be. A city can end something simply by making sure it has nowhere legal to exist. And that is what happened here. No dramatic vote, no courtroom showdown, just a slow administrative squeeze, until a project that had housed dozens of people in 12 months became 37 boxes on a storage lot, waiting for land that never came. And remember the $1,200 figure, because in 5 years this same city is going to build this same thing, and the number it prints on the invoice is going to be hard to look at. Which brings us to February of 2021. 5 years after the seizures, the city of Los Angeles cut the ribbon on the Chandler Boulevard tiny home village in North Hollywood. 40 tiny homes on a half-acre lot near a recreation center. Each unit 64 square feet. 2 beds, heat, air conditioning, a window, a small desk, and a door that locks. If you are thinking that sounds familiar, you are not imagining it. The units were manufactured by a company called Pallet, based in Everett, Washington. They ship flat, in stacks of panels, and a crew can assemble one in under an hour. Each unit cost about $7,500. The village was designed by an architecture firm, painted in bold blocks of color, and it won a National Architecture Award the following year. The city went on to open 8 more villages that same year, and more after that. The $7,500 figure is only the box. Once you add land preparation, sewer connections, power, fencing, security, staffing, and services, the real cost per bed across the Los Angeles villages averaged $42,344, according to an analysis by the A-Mark Foundation. The Chandler Boulevard site alone came to roughly $5 million, with a large share of that going into site work, including extending a sewer line about 600 feet. By some reporting, the first Chandler units worked out to around $130,000 each, a figure that pushed city officials to publicly demand that costs come down. $130,000 for 64 square feet. Elvis Summers built 48 square feet for $1,200. Now, in fairness, those two numbers are not measuring the same thing, and it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. The city's version comes with plumbing, showers, laundry, 3 meals a day, on-site security, wheelchair-accessible units, case management, and legal land with real utilities. That is not decoration. That is the difference between a box and a program, and it is genuinely worth paying for. Summers never had any of that, which is precisely why his houses ended up on sidewalks under freeway overpasses in the first place. But strip away the accounting for a second and look at the idea itself. A small, insulated, lockable private unit on legal land, used as a bridge between the street and permanent housing. That was the concept Los Angeles seized off the street in 2016 and called a bulky item. That was the concept a mayor's office declined to support, and that is the concept the same city adopted 5 years later, built at scale, and won an award for. For comparison, the average construction cost of one permanent supportive housing unit in Los Angeles in 2021 was $596,000. So did the villages work? In March of 2025, reporters from LA Public Press walked 12 of these villages, knocked on doors, and pulled the homeless services data. They covered roughly 800 units over a 13-month period and interviewed more than 40 residents across 10 sites. Of roughly 2,000 people who left the villages, about 53% returned to homelessness. Around half the residents interviewed described staff as unresponsive. 19 described water pooling under their doors after rain. 19 reported drugs, alcohol, or weapons on site despite the rules. 17 described restroom blocks they could not get into when they needed them. The villages are not a failure, and they are not a solution. They are a stopgap that keeps roughly half the people who pass through it from ending up back outside, which is meaningfully better than nothing and dramatically short of what was promised. Meanwhile, the number that started all of this has not improved. When Summers was building houses, roughly 44,000 people were sleeping outside in and around the city. In recent counts, Los Angeles County has been closer to 70,000. Look back at the whole timeline, and the pattern is hard to miss. In 2015, one man with about $100,000 in donations and a driveway full of volunteers put 37 locking doors between 37 people and the pavement in roughly a year with no permits and no staff. He got it wrong in real ways. He put private structures on public sidewalks, without plumbing, without oversight, without a plan for what happened when something caught fire. Those criticisms were valid. But the city that raised those objections took 5 years to build its own version, and when it did, the version cost between $42,000 and $130,000 per bed. As for Smokey, the trail goes quiet. She got her house in the spring of 2015. She hung a small sign on the inside wall that said, "Home Sweet Home," and after the cameras moved on, the reporting on her thins out and stops. Nobody followed up. A woman in her 60s became a headline for about a month and then went back to being one more person the system was not really counting. If you want to understand this story, that is the part to sit with, not the seizures, the silence afterward. She got that house because a neighbor bought lumber and started cutting. The system took 5 more years to agree that she should have one, and the version it eventually produced would have cost enough to build more than 100 of the house she was actually living in. I do not think the lesson here is that governments are useless or that plywood is the answer. Cities have to think about fire codes and sidewalks and what happens in year 3. That is their job, and somebody has to do it. The lesson is narrower and more uncomfortable than that. Somebody had already solved the emergency. The objection was never really that the idea was wrong. It was that the idea did not come through the proper channels. And while everyone argued about channels, 11 people went back to sleeping under a freeway with a tent. If you have made it this far, you are the kind of person who actually thinks about this instead of scrolling past it. Subscribe, because I cover these stories every week. The ordinary people who step in when the system stalls, and what it costs them. I will see you in the next one.